People often come to us when they're in crisis. Politicians, high-profile people, celebrities, saying they've had threats to their life, they've had death threats.
It's drastically different to how it was 20 years ago. When you talk about social media, stories can develop and mutate in ways that you hadn't anticipated.
Reputational threat is very often where, by leaking information around you, they're looking to destroy your reputation almost overnight.
When a newspaper used to run a story about a client, you would have a very long period of time in which to action, prepare yourselves. These days, that window has entirely gone. I am Laura Simons from Premier PR, which is an entertainment PR firm looking after actors, directors, and writers. The first thing in a crisis scenario you do is you look at all the different versions of how, where, the speed at which this could develop. It doesn't mean you actually act on it. You prepare to prepare.
My name's Philip Grundell. I am the CEO of a consultancy called Diffuse, and we provide tailor-made solutions to deal with fixated threats towards public and private figures. I was a Metropolitan Police detective and was the person brought into Parliament to set up and run the team to protect the MPs when Joe Cox was killed. If you're a high-profile person or a person in public life, generally speaking, those people who communicate a threat don't pose a threat. So people who say, I'm going to kill you, their intention is to scare you, to intimidate you. My experience of dealing with people who are being targeted is that if you are the recipient of constant targeted abuse or threats, you become quite paranoid. So you start thinking threats are out there where they may not be, and you become hypervigilant. And so there's a really good example of a particular individual who had a stalker. He had a full protection team around him, had everything. But actually he was in his hotel checking the windows because he didn't feel safe. You can have the best protection, but if you don't feel safe, that's because psychologically you're unsafe, and it happens in between your ears. So I can tell you that when I worked in Parliament, we were going through the toxicity of the Brexit debates and the Brexit votes. And I would have MPs coming to me saying they were scared about how they were going to vote because of the repercussions that when their vote was then published, they were going to get abused or they're going to get threatened. So we know that it impacts your decision making. If you're a very successful business person and you are being targeted or threatened, you may be able to cope with it, but your family may not. So your family may be applying pressure on you, saying, this isn't worth it, walk away, we don't need all this hassle. So actually, all of a sudden, you leave that business and the share price plummets. The psychological side of the threat is the side that is very often ignored and is often the most dangerous side.
When you talk about social media, you can have a story and then you can have 20 different voices popping up. Everybody's got a camera. Everyone is also their own publisher. Stories can develop and mutate in ways that you hadn't anticipated. You react as quickly as you can once the story has broken. And when I say react, it doesn't necessarily mean react to the story, but react in terms of a team preparing for how you wish to handle what eventually comes out. When you first see the story, have a look at it, look at what matters, understand the jeopardy of what matters. You know, the jeopardy might be you've got an uncomfortable few days. The jeopardy might be you've been accused of something which is entirely inappropriate. The jeopardy might be that, someone has done something that has identified your home address and therefore it's a security risk. And that's the point at which you start talking about, okay, what team do we need around us? We'll find the advice of counsel really, really useful. Building up that relationship as well also means that in the scenario of a crisis, you've already got the shorthand and you've already got a legal representation who have an understanding of your needs, your beliefs, your circumstances.
Reputational threat is very often where, by leaking information around you, they're looking to destroy your reputation almost overnight. We see that very often these days in the age of cancel culture, where posts or other information that's been on the internet for decades all of a sudden is leaked and revealed. And we've got a couple of clients who literally their careers have been wiped out overnight.
In the more recent years, we've had movements like Me Too coming forward, which has highlighted a really, really important situation, particularly within my industry. I think it's very important to understand if you have something that comes in relation to that. On some respects, it is potentially career-ending for someone who's being accused of something. Equally, that person also might be entirely innocent of what they're being accused of. When you recognize that something might be defamatory or dangerous, going through a long process is not going to be helpful because the story will have run more and more, and therefore fast action is far more important, in which case that's when you pull out the big guns and you will reach out to the right lawyer.
In today's age, it's absolutely fundamental that legal advice does not operate in a silo. There are a number of skill sets that are crucial to protecting reputation, and these range from digital intelligence to strategic communications to other areas of investigation. And all these skill sets need to operate together in order to form the best strategy for the client.
Inevitably, if something comes at you that is potentially quite serious, I would immediately go to the lawyer as the first point of call. As things develop, that's when you do bring in other parties. Anything from, psychological assessment of a stalker. When people have been hacked and information, you will need to bring in cyber experts, we'll need to bring in security.
There's a need to act quickly, efficiently, but also in tandem with some of the other advisors whose skill sets are necessary in this environment.
The presentation of a potential story, true or untrue, can cause trauma for people. You need to be surrounded by people who can give you objective, educated opinions.